I've been watching John Todd recently. He is a professed Illuminati ex-witch who exposed the occult and how it ties in with the political system and the world leaders. Before that, um, I was kind of convinced of William Cooper's idea that the evil people who are running the world actually didn't believe in the devil because they believed in like the supremacy of intelligence. And in reading some of Morals and Dogma by Albert Pike, um, I could see how someone would think, and because I've only read like a few pages of it, but the way he describes the force of, he describes like a force. I can see how that can be seen as a metaphor and not as an actual, like the actual Lucifer, which is what they call him, and how people who don't have that experience could assume that everything is metaphorical within Freemasonry, even in the upper levels, and also in occultism. People can assume if you don't have that experience, you can see it as being a metaphor because it's just too outside of your reality to even consider that people could be having experiences with actual entities, actual invisible or spiritual entities, whether in day visions or in dreams, or in regular conversation, like an audible voice in your head. Now, I realized, through John Todd's testimony, that in some ways the occult paralleled my own experience. And that's how I was able to validate some of what he was saying, because it's like, hey, I've experienced that. As I've expressed in multiple videos, many videos, I used to be demon possessed. And still, even now, I have dreams where I'm tempted, like after Christ was tempted in the wilderness. The devil left him for a time. But as we see, he came back in the form of Peter to try to convince him not to go through with the way he was supposed to die. And Christ had to tell Peter, "Get thee behind me, Satan." So the devil comes in throughout our lives to try to tempt us, and it ends up strengthening true Christians. But he does place those offenses and stumbling blocks before us in order to cause us to, question our faith, or to try to weaken us or turn us from God or whatever. But anyway, so I've had my experience parallel theirs in that I have demonic attacks. Like, I have regular experience and interaction with these demonic forces through dreams. The difference is that from the way John Todd was expressing it, the forces of evil are actually on their side, like the side of the people who are in the occult, the people who are witches, who are in the upper levels, the people who are actually running the country. Not the country, but the world, actually. Like the Rothschilds and, people like that who own the majority of the wealth of the world. They are actually, the demons, the demonic forces are actually on the side of them. They're able to experience excess through them and world rulership through them. So they're going to have a different experience with these demonic entities than I'm going to have. In my experience with demonic entities, I'm going to experience them trying to harass me, trying to mislead me, but the experiences they have might be prophetic experiences. We look at Pharaoh and how Pharaoh's magicians were able to do some of the same things that Aaron and Moses were able to do through the power of God. And, one could say that God used this, allowing the demonic forces that were behind the power of Pharaoh's magicians. One could say that God was using that in order to harden Pharaoh's heart. But the fact remains that these magicians who were not of God were still able to produce magical results that mirror those of Aaron and Moses to a certain extent. And then, once they weren't able to, once they were no longer able to reproduce the same kinds of signs and wonders and magic with quotes that Aaron and Moses were able to present before Pharaoh, then it was like, oh, these must be these men, Moses and Aaron must be of God. But to a certain extent, we see even there that yes, demonic forces, these people who worship, see, we see it as like who would worship the devil, you know? And I think that might be also a block in our mind in terms of being able to rationalize why would anyone willingly worship the devil when the Bible tells us that the devil loses in the end, and those associated with him will suffer greatly. But when you look at it from their perspective, these demonic entities are producing results for them. Okay? Just like, with Pharaoh and his magicians, they're to a certain extent, they are allowed, they're spiritual entities, and they are allowed some magical powers. Just like the girl who was following Paul around, like these are men sent by God. And Paul knew that, a demonic spirit was in this girl, this prophecy, this magical gift that she had was of a demonic sort, When Saul wanted to inquire of Samuel, he went to, people who practice sorcery, and they were able to bring up the actual Samuel. So there can be spiritual gifts can also be bestowed upon evil people through demonic entities. So that is the pull. And if you look at like the Rothschilds, I mean, they're trillionaires. They own most of the world's wealth. Obviously, these demonic entities that they're relying on, like if you listen to John Todd, you hear him talk about how clearly, I mean, they have most of the wealth. They're the head of the Illuminati, and clearly they're deriving benefit, material success through depending on these demonic entities. So people worship the devil, and there's witchcraft and it's on the rise and sorcery and stuff like that because they're actually getting results. Is it short term? In terms of our way of thinking, maybe it's not short term. I mean, if your family is able to stay in power for hundreds of years, that's not seen as short term. But in terms of God's view of time, of course, it's short term because, if it'll lead to your destruction, if it'll lead to your punishment, it's not everlasting, then, it's short term. It's something less than, and then, God knows the outcome of, following evil spirits. But to them, they're deriving benefit. There's a benefit associated with it. And so that's why they actually worship the devil. Now, it's hard for us to realize this because, witchcraft to me was introduced through television. That was my first exposure to like witchcraft, television. So what does that do? And they know this. That's why they put it on television. If your first encounter with something is fiction, like if your first exposure to witchcraft is through a fiction television show, whenever witchcraft is presented to you later on, you're going to think fiction. That's the association your brain has made. That's what's been burned in your mind. So you don't actually believe, and if you're told, you still associate. That's how powerful the mind is. Like you build a narrative. They know that if you build a certain narrative, your brain will twist and bend in order to fit things into, or actually your brain will bend other things in order to fit into the narrative that you already have. So the narrative that you have, the association that you first established is that of witchcraft being associated with fiction, then anything else that you experience concerning witchcraft in the future, you're going to associate with it being fiction, and you're going to make it fiction by sometimes erroneously associating what you see in witchcraft, in real witchcraft, you'll say whether it's fiction or not, based on whether or not that is the same as what you had seen earlier in the fiction movies, which that can be very misleading, because sometimes they base these fictional, or I'd say a lot of times, I mean, they base these fictional movies on what they actually do, and it's not the other way around. It's not like they're getting their inspiration from movies, but what movies do is make witchcraft more popular and make demonic spirit worship, even though they're they're not they're hiding behind other images, but making Luciferianism or demonic entity worship more popular to kids, or a younger audience, through these cool movies that promote witchcraft and make the lead characters heroes, multidimensional um, uh, heroes that save the world or whatever, are good. So they can make witchcraft popular to the masses. At the same time, they can make it fiction to those who are to be kept in the dark, by having their brains associate what they see in those movies as fiction. And so when it's shown in actual real life, or they come across a documentary or something, it's like, oh, that's fiction, because I've already seen that before. So the sad thing about it is that, and I was realizing this just through this realization, that yes, they actually do worship the devil, whom they call Lucifer. The sad thing is that the people in the middle, they're Christians, and they're Christians who actually have spiritual experiences. I'm a Christian who has spiritual experiences. I'm a Christian who has regular dreams and interaction with spiritual entities. But then there are the Christians who, like, they go to church, they have that label, but they don't have any spiritual, they don't have any spiritual experiences, any supernatural experiences. And then on the other end of the spectrum, they're the agnostics, and then they're the atheists who also don't have any spiritual experiences. And then on the far end, there are the Luciferians, or, the people who also have spiritual experiences, but of the opposite sort. Like in terms of, my spiritual experiences are the demons tempting me, or, God helping me. Their experiences, the demons helping them. But the two extremes have insight into the spirit realm, and they know how powerful spiritual forces are. Sadly, the people in the middle who don't have any spiritual experience have a false understanding of how the world works. And they're often kept in the dark, not only of how the world works and the principalities in high places that actually control these human vessels that are put before us as leaders. They don't have any insight into that, but they also don't have any insight into their own possession, their own manipulation, by these unseen, invisible entities. Sadly, in school, people are taught to see their dreams as just their imagination, so they don't pay attention to them. They're told that their thoughts are all their own, that there couldn't be, a spiritual force putting thoughts in your mind. No, that couldn't be. And so it's just sad for the people in the middle who really don't know. They just don't know. I mean, I found, unfortunately, that I have more in common with someone who, in terms of my spiritual experiences, someone who worships the devil, who actually worships demonic entities, would understand me, might understand me better, and I might understand them better than someone in the middle who doesn't have any spiritual experiences, because I know what demons do. So if they're explaining something, how a demon helped them or something, like, I can go through my experiences and say, yep, they do that, because, I know what they do. I know how they try to influence you, because there was a time when they were trying to influence me to be on their side. And before I was in Christ, I was actually helping their cause. So I understand when they say, yeah, I got inspiration to, do this or what. Yeah, I understand. Yeah, I got plenty of inspiration from demons when I was not in Christ. So yeah, I know exactly how they do it. I know how they do it through dreams, not just one dream, multiple dreams, to build on that knowledge base, so that your thoughts kind of overwhelm you, because you're having all these dreams and they're all pointing to one particular thing. And you're after you have so many dreams, it's like programming. If you have so many dreams about the same thing, slight variations, sooner or later you're going to start believing that, because that becomes your reality. um the other day, and I mean, this is just it's amazing how easily it is for these demonic forces to work through just everyday common people. I was in another city the other day, and I went to the grocery store, and as I was coming behind, like I was going to an aisle, or I was going to check out, and there was someone ahead of me in line. Now, as I was walking up behind this person, I just knew in my mind they were going to give me a compliment. And it wasn't like, oh, please give me a compliment. It's just I knew they were going to give me a compliment. Like someone put the thought in my head, that they were going to give me a compliment. A few seconds later, that person gave me a compliment, but it was a backhanded compliment. It's like they gave me the compliment, and then they said, I know you don't get a lot of compliments. And then they gave me another sarcastic kind of, like, some people don't know style. So it's like they gave me a compliment, but then they tried to like bring me up and then bring me down. But because I had been given that thought before they said that, I was creeped out, and then plus they look like, they look demonically possessed. So it's like I kept my distance in the line. But I was so freaked out. All I could do was like briefly smile, because like I knew this person. And then they were getting like cigarettes or something, Black and Milds or something. So I mean, clearly they were, not, not in Christ. But it's like I knew a few seconds before they said it, I knew what they were going to say. And that to me is me giving insight into how easy it is for demonic entities to influence people. It's like I was being given like a broadcast of what they were being given. Like they were being told to give me the compliment. They were being told what to say to me. And I just picked up on it because I knew that they would say it. Okay. In that same city, I was still in that city. I was driving into a business parking lot, and someone was crossing the sidewalk, and I let them cross. I stopped and let them cross. They flashed me the AOK 666 sign, and that's 666. That's not AOK. And these are devil horns. It's not rock and roll. So when you see Donald Trump putting up the 666 sign and you see the devil horns, those aren't rock and roll, and it's not okay. That's praise to the devil. And some of the people, and what throws people off is like some of the people who throw up the signs don't even know what it means. It's just the signs have been thrown up so much, it's cool to throw them up. But that's just how pervasive and how insidious and how hidden in plain sight worship of the devil is. But the people who are actually in control, the people at the highest levels actually do worship the devil, and the devil does give them insight into the future, limited insight into the future. But like I said, with Pharaoh's magicians, they are giving they're given spiritual powers, these demonic entities, and they can actually help these people who seek their demonic wisdom, if you will. They actually do have power, and that's why people would actually worship the devil if it seems unbelievable. That's why, because they're actually getting practical, in their mind, practical results. With the Rothschilds, look at their wealth. They've actually received tangible benefits from these demonic entities. So that's why it's actually true that they worship the devil. It's not like, oh, this is some kind of conspiracy theory. I mean, it's obvious that they've derived benefit from whatever counsel they're taking, whatever game plan they've been given. And the truth of the matter is, the devil is their God, and who they listen to, and who they get inspiration and direction from. And if that weren't enough, when I came back to the city that I live in, the same thing happened. I was at the grocery store, and I knew that I was heading towards the cart, and I knew that the people at the cart, they had gotten a buggy, and I knew that they were going to offer it to me. I just knew it, like seconds before it happened. They turned around. They had a buggy. They turned around. There were plenty of buggies. You know Walmart. They have them lined up. Plenty of buggies. They offered me their buggy, and seconds before, I knew that they were going to offer me their buggy. Made no sense at all. That's never happened before. There are plenty of buggies there. It takes a second to get your own buggy. They offered me the buggy they had already grabbed hold of to take into the store, into the main part of the store. And all I could do was kind of shake my head, kind of smile. I was spooked out because the same thing had happened with the guy at the store concerning the compliment. I mean, they didn't give me any backhanded compliments or anything like that. They just offered me their buggy. But once I said, I kind of shook my head no, and I got my own buggy. They just walked in with the buggy that they had, which was the buggy they were planning on walking in with. Why would they offer it to me? And just things like that. It's like I was given broadcasted to me was I don't know I don't know if maybe I don't know, but all I know is that with those instances, I was given the thought of what they were going to say before they said it. So and that can only be a spiritual, that only through spiritual means would I know that. Only through spiritual means, only through a spirit entity giving me that insight. Not telepathy or anything like that, not me influencing them, but an outside spiritual entity knowing that that's what they were going to do. Now, a few days ago, I had a dream where I was being asked by the teacher of a class to get in a group and write down my strengths and my weaknesses. And so I couldn't, and I feel like this was God also sabotaging. I've done video, I did a video, my last video actually, on how God defeats Satan in our dream world. But in this dream, I was being told to write on a sheet of paper my strengths and my weaknesses. But I couldn't find any paper to write on. And I feel like this was God sabotaging that particular dream because I feel it was a demonic dream. And I knew within the dream, I had the feeling that they didn't want my strengths. They actually wanted my weaknesses, and they were trying to get me to write them down. Now, I couldn't find any paper, so I never wrote them down. And I thought in my mind, well, why am I the only one to write it down? Like if we're in a group, because she had put us in groups of like 7 people, why am I the only one to write them down? And I was thinking, shouldn't I be writing down other people's weaknesses and then strengths and weaknesses? And then I realized, okay, in this dream, this demonic force is trying to get me to write down my weaknesses. You see, so in the dream world, they're trying to find, if you're not on their side, or even if you are, I mean, if they can find a weakness to exploit, in order to get you in their grasp. Because if you are tempted by something, you have a weakness, and they can use that in order to tempt you, then the barrier that God puts up to block those entities from entering you or influencing you, well, they of course they still try to tempt you, but to prevent them from actually entering you, it's you have to stay in the spirit. You have to not be actively participating in sin. But if they can find a weakness, they can find a crack in order to get into you, or in order to thwart your ministry or whatever. And so that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to get me to write that. The sneakiness about it is that they made it seem like a class assignment, like an innocent class assignment where we put in groups. It's like, oh, just make a list of strengths and weaknesses, and they made it seem like I was not the target. Like there are other people in your group, although most of the people in the group were too vague to even see. But they wanted my weaknesses. They wanted me to write down not my strengths, but they wanted me to write down my weaknesses, and they cloaked it in this whole this broadcast in my dream. So, that just shows how crafty these entities are. They're able to pull stuff out of people Like they can use your memories in order to appear as people you've known in the past in order to produce a certain emotion. If they want you to feel comforted in a dream, they can appear as your mother or a relative or deceased relatives or something like that. If they want you to experience fear, they can appear as someone who's scared you in the past. If they want you to feel shame, they can appear as someone who produced shame in you in the past. They have that kind of ability to extract from you information in order to present whatever image they want in your dreams, you know? And that's why so many people are able to just, because, you know, dreams would be the most obvious sign that there is spiritual activity in the world if so many people didn't just ignore them. But people are taught. I mean, that shows you the brain is so, so powerful. Once you're given a narrative, your brain will bend and twist things in order to fit into that narrative. So even though you might have elaborate dreams where something is trying to deceive you and you know something is trying to deceive you or trying to get you to behave a certain way, your brain, your brain can actually rewrite that entire dream to be your imagination because it fits in with the narrative that you have accepted or has been given to you, which is usually the case. You know, the school system doesn't teach about God, you know, and I feel as though in an effort for the people who rule society who actually worship the devil to ease people into also worshiping the devil, and for, you know, and them allowing the devil to come into, you know, come into the light, so to speak, as the one to be worshiped, they have to pull them away from Christianity, you know, which is the ultimate truth. So how do you do that? Through promoting atheism. You know, you get people to distrust God and distrust His way, and then you kind of ease them into. And you know, this is a theory of mine, because you would think that if people don't have any spiritual, just like now, you know, when people have no spiritual experience, they don't believe in God or the devil. So I would think it would be difficult to get someone who is an atheist or has no spiritual experience in order to get them to actually worship the devil. I would think that would be quite difficult. But unfortunately, these people are already usually possessed. You know, it's just they're no hindrance to the demonic forces that are possessing them. Just like, you know, with the guy at the grocery store, it's like you would think that the demonic spirit told him to say that, and he said it. You know, it's not difficult to get a non-spiritual person to to say. And actually, I'll tell you what the compliment. He complimented my hair, and then he said, "I don't think you get a lot of you don't get a lot of compliments, and people don't understand style." Like he was saying that my hair was a style, and I really didn't know what to say, because it's like, this is my actual hair. It's not a style. It's just the way my hair grows out of my head. But I like had it braided, and you know, he just, you know, and on the surface, it would seem like a genuine compliment. And yeah, I mean, I have natural hair. Natural hair is not, you know, the popular type of hair. So yeah, it would be it to the normal person. Yeah, okay, I don't get a lot of compliments. That would be something that people would assume, because this kind of hair isn't on television. And but the fact that I was given the thought that he was going to say it before he actually said it, and the fact that, and the way he actually looked, especially when he was saying it, I knew there was something else to that. So I mean, it's almost like some Denzel Fallon's, you know, stuff type things going on here recently, um, with the random guy flashing the 666 sign, and the you know, given the insight of what people were going to say before they said it. But it's just spiritual activity is all around us. Um, and the easiest way to see it is through your dreams. Um, it's just, you know, because all your other senses are, you know, are shut down, and you know, you can actually concentrate on that spiritual experience. But like I said, too many people have been taught early on that dreams are just imagination, and so it's hard to get them to see that. But just as I receive spiritual strength and understanding and benefits through God. On the other side, the ones who are ruling, um, the prince of this world or whatever, the ones who are ruling with him, they also receive benefits from dark entity, from, demonic entities, fallen angels, the devil himself. So that's why it's not an actual fairy tale. They make it seem that way because it's something that's too horrible for most people to even accept. So it's best to keep it as a fiction and to introduce it first as a fiction and kind of ease people into it. And it is happening. I mean, people's senses are being dulled. The more grotesque, I mean, if you look at television, it's just becoming more and more disgusting and permissive, and just more nudity, more violence, more vulgarity, cursing. Just it's becoming more demonic, and people are becoming more entertainers are becoming more openly devilish, and they're numbing you and dulling you down so that once the once it's more out in the open who the rulers actually worship. Once that's brought to light, people will already be so degraded in terms of their morality and their spirituality that they'll be willing to accept anything, because they'll be at the level of beasts, who, as long as you feed me, I'll go along with whatever you say. So I just wanted to shed some light on that, just so people realize that, these people aren't blindly following the devil. They aren't like, oh, they're, greedy atheists who want to rule the world, and they're just using the symbol of the devil as, intellect or whatever, because they're just so prideful and egotistical. No, they're actually having spiritual communication with evil entities that are giving them prophecy, that are giving them guidance, and who they trust in order to keep them in power. So it's real. It's real, and if you don't accept the fact that it's real, then you know it'll be too late. It'll be too late once they are out in the open.